Good evening. Welcome to the One Young World and Build Caucus, live from New York City, sponsored by Verizon. My name is Justina Nixon-Saintil, and I'm the Director for Corporate Social Responsibility at Verizon. We are pleased to be part of the conversation tonight, especially since the topic around how we leverage technology to ensure inclusive and equitable access for all is something that Verizon has focused on for the last few years. Since 2012, we have provided technology, access, and STEM curricula to 1.7 million under-resourced youth across the country. And we have a goal of reaching 3 million young people by 2021. So we are very proud to be here tonight with a very young and accomplished panel from our One Young World community to discuss how we provide technology and access to positively impact even more people around the world. Before we introduce the panel, I would like to provide a quick background about One Young World. Dubbed the Junior Davos by CNN, One Young World seeks to create the next generation of more responsible and effective leadership by identifying, promoting, and connecting the world's most impactful young leaders. The annual One Young World Summit convenes the brightest leaders from across the country and every sector, working to accelerate social impact. Delegates from 190 countries are counseled by influential political, humanitarian, and business leaders, such as Justin Trudeau, Paul Pullman, and Meghan Markle, amongst many other global figures. At Verizon, our very own president of our global business, Ronan Dunn, is a counselor for One Young World. Young leaders are selected to attend the summit via a competitive process based on proven leadership ability and impact. Building a diverse international community is One Young World's priority. We will get to the panel momentarily, but we would like to show a short video that highlights the event last year at The Hague, which I had the privilege of attending.
Dear young leaders of the world, welcome to The Hague, our city of peace and justice.
Welcome to 1,800 young leaders from 193 countries.
You have the power to influence, especially if you stand as one.
We must have faith in the courage of the young to take on these important challenges. Change it yourselves.
Sexual violence is found in the citadels of power, and it respects no borders whatsoever.
The whole Me Too thing is never about sex. It's about power.
And like many victims, I blamed myself for getting raped. We will not be silent anymore. Together, we can unite to end sexual violence.
We want a world where every country is developing the potential of every young person every single moment.
Your generation is the first that will experience the full impacts of climate change.
Never have we been so forewarned about what is going to happen.
We need new perspectives on old problems.
We need the knowledge, the skills, the energy, the ambition, the enthusiasm of young people.
I came back from Bogota and I said, we're in. I was so incredibly inspired, so here we are.
Let's stand up and be counted.
To talk about physical challenges gives you more power.
I do need to. Sometimes cooperation, but always feel close in the first place.
Please make a statement for inclusion for all, where no one gets left behind. Not because disability is more important, because difference.
I look to One Young World to help us set course for a safe world.
I will let everyone know that it all started right here at One Young World.
Over a week ago, I was elected to represent the state of São Paulo.
We have recycled 1.5 million plastic bottles to build new homes.
With this technology, we have filtered 14.4 million liters of water.
I became the first female medical doctor to stand against virginity testing.
This is the power of One Young World, that you can take all of these examples and do it yourself.
This has definitely been the most enriching, inspiring, enlightening experiences I have ever had.
Thank you for the difference you're making to help change the world for the better.
Because it's really time to make a difference. The world is in need.
It's your world. It's your now and it's your future.
Are you aware that you have all the power that a human being can have?
Our mission at One Young World is for you to go back to your home and accelerate change.
Drown out the noise, the distraction, and the naysayers.
Stand up for your beliefs, set ambitious goals, and never give up pursuing them.
Thank you for turning our city into a magical place.
That next year, the 10th summit will be coming home to the UK.
And I look forward to seeing each and every one of you next year in London at One Young World.
You are the first generation that cannot and must not fail.
So tonight's panel will focus on ways we can leverage technology or other approaches to ensure inclusive and equitable access to education in our ever-changing world. So we are thrilled today to have Aminka Belvitt, founder of ForUsGirls, Saad Amer, founder of Plus One Vote, and Ousmane founder of Let Girls Be Educated. So I would like each of you, starting with Aminka, to provide a 2-minute background on your project and how it connects to the topic around providing equitable access.
Yes, thank you so much for having me today. I'm so excited. So my foundation, the ForUsGirls Foundation, it works in Canada, the United States, and Jamaica. And the way that we work with equitable access to education and technology is that we ensure girls from marginalized communities and low-income backgrounds have access to developing skills such as learning how to code, but also to understand digital literacy and learning how to create your own website, also to understand in project management. So we incorporate those types of skills building in all of the programs that we do. When we work with schools, either it's Montreal or Ottawa, or even here in the New York City and the New Jersey area. And so one of the things that we find that we push a lot is with our New Reality Tech Summit that's founded here in New York City, and it runs every year in the spring, and so far we've reached over 400 girls in the region.
Oh, wonderful. And Amer?
Hello, everybody. Hi, I'm Saad. Thank you for having me. So I'm the founder of Plus One Vote, which is a nonprofit organization based here in the United States with a very simple mission: to get you all out to vote. And the idea here is that, you know, there's such an issue of representation in this country at all levels. And if we can get more people to the polls, then we can transform how this country implements policy and who's represented when we're making those policies. And so we are a grassroots organization doing campaigns on the ground across America, as well as digital organizing. And the goal being to ensure access to everyone across this country has the ability to register to vote and has the tools and resources to be able to become activists themselves and to get other people to register to vote as well. They're plus ones.
And Ousmane.
Hi, I'm excited to join all of you here today. So I'm the founder of Let Girls Be Educated, formerly known as Girl Child Project. And basically, our mission is to educate the girl child and give her the foundation she needs to succeed in life. And we try to do that by first providing sponsorship for her to go to school. And so far, we've been able to sponsor 200 girls, and now we're about to send the next batch of 50 girls to school in Guinea. And the second way we go about this is by empowering the men at the same time to join the conversation for girls' education and women's empowerment. And we have this program called Coexist, which I'm personally responsible for, through which I educate my fellow men and boys to join the campaign and basically be part of the process in empowering women and girls. And the third one is engaging the community and the parents in the educational endeavor of the girl child, because we believe empowering the girls, not at the expense of our community, but with the support of our community. So pretty much our underlying theme is to give the girls the education she needs to succeed in life. And right now we are, due to the demanding nature of our organization, we are rebranding. as you may notice by the name of our organization, Let Girls Be Educated. So yeah, and we're excited about it.
All right, great. So I'm actually going to start with you, Ousmane. So I graduated from college a long, long time ago with a mechanical engineering degree, and I was the only African-American woman at the time in my class. And when I look at the statistics now we haven't moved the needle much, right? Around 20%, at least in the US, of women are getting bachelor's degrees in engineering and computer science. And for African-American women, it's around 5.6%. So can you talk about why women are still vastly underrepresented in STEM fields, specifically technology fields? And what do you think about how you can get them interested early on, or how can we bring more technology to support them in education?
So I think, for instance, with respect to my region, Africa, for instance, or Guinea specifically, of course, it's very important to engage the girls and interest them at an early stage, because that's the foundation. Once they have that, it's very easy for them to pursue, go into STEM field, for instance. But what's important here is the access to those technologies and having that access to that field in the first place. Because, for instance, in my country, Guinea, let's take, for instance, in the region like Kankang, Kindia, and Conakry, in the capital itself, there are schools that do not have computers for girls, in a sense, which means there's a separation between boys and girls. The girls-oriented school do not have the necessary facilities they need to succeed, such as lack of computers. So I think the most important thing, the most important question we should target at this point is enabling access for girls to have, for girls to be in school in the first place. And we talk about giving them access to these technologies. It is very important. And I would like to commend Sierra Leone, the neighboring countries of Guinea. The president himself has established a ministry, which is called the Digital Ministry, to help install technologies in girls-oriented schools so that these girls can be interested at a very early stage. So the first step is basically providing access for these girls to engage in technology.
You mentioned something interesting when you talked about your project, about the emphasis on bringing men into the equation as well. Can you talk a little bit about that and why you think that's very important?
Well, it's really important. Today, when we talk about empowering girls, women empowerment, it's true, it's all about women empowerment, but we forget that it's a two-way street. When we talk about women empowerment, we're also talking about changing the mentality of the man to, engage, to allow his wife or his sister or his, mother to be free, in a sense, to have a free thinking, to engage in a conversation at our own will. So it's very important to have the men engage in this conversation, because most of the time we are the one preventing the women to succeed, in a sense. So if we have a change in mentality at a very early stage, that would help us make progress.
Okay, great. Aminka, so at Verizon, we are very focused on exposing our students to emerging technologies, right? Like 5G, artificial intelligence, virtual reality, and augmented reality, so they're not left behind in the digital economy. How can we prevent advances in technology from becoming yet another unequally distributed resource in education?
I think the first way to do that is definitely how we do with Young Women World. We, and also to, at a New Reality Tech Summit, what I learned from Young Women World is to be able to expose the girls to different things at the same time. So the way that we do is that we have different workshops where the girls rotate and they interact with the different technologies such as Bitcoin, cryptocurrency, and the way that you can use that in the education is that you need to incorporate not just in your math classes and your science classes, like you have to do it in your English classes. So you can find a way to use a new app that teaches you how to take a picture and it becomes like a Picasso, right? So there's so many things that are being made so easy for us, but I think sometimes we're so focused on technology has to only be for engineers, and it kind of plays to why a lot of girls aren't in the field, because we're telling girls that building stuff is only for boys, and so therefore you're not even having an open mind of what you can do. So technology can be in any subject, and that's the first point. It is about digitalizing your classroom and how you can bring in Google Classroom, different apps, and even just learning a simple code that will be able to help you further. So that's one how you can get the access further when you started in schools. Primary schools, kids are so quick. They're always on their phone. They're always on iPads. And then also, too, when they're using in their elementary school, they go up to primary and high school. So when they get to college level, they're already like tech whiz kids at that point.
Okay, wonderful. So do you have a story of success, or how do you measure success for the students that participate in your program, especially when they start getting exposed to all of these different skill sets and technologies?
Yes, I actually have two really quick good ones. This year, we had the opportunity to create a career day for Figure Skating in Harlem here. It's a very big organization. Some of you guys might have heard of them. About a year or two ago, Beyonce selected them when she did her Ivy Park to receive funds from the first sales of Ivy Park. And so I partnered with them actually August 2018. Some of the girls attended our tech summit. And then they called me and they said, hey, we'd really like to show our girls different careers that they can do. We always send them to UPS and different companies. They said, I think what you do is really cool. So I created a really great experience for them with our partners, SAP at 10 Hudson Yard. And we did design thinking. And what I said to the girls, okay, so imagine you're trying to create a program for girls in Harlem who are not interested in math or in development. How would you reach them? And so we went through the steps of design thinking, and they built out their own plan. And at the end, one of the girls said, you know what? I think I actually want to be an engineer, because I realize now, engineer, you're just building one step to the next, and it's a big picture. And for me, that was it touched me, because I said, imagine she wasn't exposed to this way of thinking and a perspective. She would have never thought of engineering. And then just recently at our tech summit, our second edition that we had in May, the girls who attended it for their English project, they were asked to select an organization that they would like to do their end of the year project. They actually selected the ForUsGirls Foundation. These girls are girls of color. They're between the ages of 15 to 16. And they went on our website and they said they felt that our mission identified with them. Seeing a young Black woman starting an organization to empower other Black women really touched for them. And then not only did they select our organization to do research, they organized a movie night and raised over $300 for the organization and asked their teacher to give those who attended credits to raise the funds. So to me, what it's showing is that, number one, representation is so important, that our community, we have the skills to be able to solve our own solutions and to empower the next generation. And number two, you can't understand what you're not able to do if you're not able to see the full picture. So those are things that I get from the work that I do with my organizations.
I see how happy you are talking about this. So how do you feel being a role model for the young people who participate?
I think most of the time I love it. I think it's a privilege, because when the teacher sent me the email, I was really shocked. And being an entrepreneur and starting this is very hard. You would think trying to do something good in the world would just be easy. It's hard. It's really hard. And when you hear that the way that you're creating change, it's affecting someone's life and they're going to do something else, it tells you, okay, you're not crazy and there's something to what you're doing. So it reinforces you, but I do see it as it's a big privilege that I have this opportunity.
Okay, wonderful. So Saad, you have been successful, especially with social media, in supporting various causes. How can we leverage technology to empower young people to get their communities involved in eliminating the digital divide?
You know, it's interesting when we talk about young people and we sort of talk about representation, as you were mentioning, and how to empower people, what I find is that often there's this sort of mentality, especially when it comes to democracy in the United States, that somebody else will take care of it. Somebody else is going to do this, and it's not up to me. Someone is going to take care of it. But the reality is, when you're in a democracy and you are equal to everyone else, you have to take care of it, right? It is your fundamental role as a citizen, as a person in this country, to raise your voice up as loud as you can. And if you're not actively advocating for what it is that you believe in, then do not expect anyone to pull through and do what it is that you want. And so in creating Plus One, the sort of idea was that if we could reach everyone in this country, especially young people, through digital media, and we could empower them with the tools and the resources to be able to raise their own voice and become activists in their own communities by getting other people out to vote, I saw that there was this transformative sort of viewpoint that people had when I told them about this idea, because it was really simple in nature, go out and bring a +1. And when you break down all of those barriers, all of that policy jargon, all of that lingo, when you take that all out of the equation and you just make it about people, and you make it about what people believe in, it becomes so easy. And what I found was that the campaigns that we were running were reaching millions of people, in all these celebrities, from Alyssa Milano to Jimmy Kimmel, and it was just so exciting to see that there was this sort of energy in this country, because I think we're living in a time where a lot of people are frustrated, right? I'm sure all you guys have seen, and everyone is frustrated. I don't care what side of the aisle you're on. And everyone wants to do something. And so what I found was that there was this world of people online, all using social media, a lot of people complaining. By tapping into that as a resource, those people then became activists and were able to take their thoughts and feelings and amplify them within their own communities and grow that out to be something that meaningfully had an impact in the election.
So we talked about inequalities, right? We have a growing trend that economic inequality is really impacting a lot of people in the United States. So talk about how you're focused on that as an issue, especially as it's tied to technology and education, or even what you're doing around the environment.
Representation is an interesting thing, because it has to happen at all levels for it to really be meaningful, right? We need representatives who sound like us, who talk like us, who think like us, and we need that to happen with people and activists on the ground as well. Okay. And so when we're looking at issues like climate change, which is one of the issues that I'm most passionate about, this is a global issue. We need everybody in on this issue, making changes in their lives, but also big changes in policy up at the top. And if we don't see that sort of bottom-up and top-down approach, then we're really missing a large part of the picture. And when it comes to education in this field and in civic engagement, so much of it is missing in America. We don't really teach about these sorts of things in schools, and there's such a gap. And our education system is based on something from the 60s. And our colleges, too, while we look at them as beacons of innovation, they often don't innovate fast enough. And so that gave, when the whole digital world and digital communications and social media came up, that created such a touch point, such an access point to be able to really engage people on a larger scale and fill in that curriculum gap that we're not seeing in traditional education, to be able to get that representation where it needs to be.
Okay, oh, wonderful, good. So we have around 4 or 5 minutes left before we're going to open it up for questions. I'm going to talk about megatrends, and I'm going to throw it out to you guys. Anyone can opt in to talk about what this trend means to you, right? Rise in automation. It's a tough one. Rise in automation as far as it pertains to technology and education.
I want to take that one. For me, it's an opportunity. When you say that, I remember it was September 2007, and it was during the General Assembly week. It was Global Goals Week, and I attended an event at SAP, their innovation space, and Professor Mohammed Yunus was there. And he was talking about, it was about the global goals, and he was saying that there is a point, and if we want to, we can really solve all of them. And you probably heard this before. We really can solve every issue in the world if we really wanted to. They say for so many years, if we wanted to feed everybody, we could. And he said, but the question is, do we really want to solve every problem? Because if we do, then what are we going to do with our time? And I feel like that's the intersection with automation. Is now that everyone's like, it's going to take our job. No, what it's doing is taking mundane tasks that really, the human experience is not supposed to do those things. You're not supposed to do repetition tasks and drive into one place and dropping off a box. You're supposed to interact with one another. And imagine if you had extra time to either play with your cat, knit, do your hair mock, or do your nails. What that is, you're building social capital, you're building social cohesion, and you really then can create a more equitable society. So to me, as a social entrepreneur and a change maker, I see it as an opportunity. Like, yes, bring in more robots, but the thing is that do we really want the robots to come in, because then people feel inadequate, they can't do their jobs. But that's the question: why do you feel so attached to a mundane task that's not your fulfilling of your calling? So that's how I see it in my my perspective.
It also changes the types of skills, right, that young people need. You know, when you think about the workforce of the future, if automation will handle some of the basic tasks, how are you thinking about higher level order of problem solving skills and creativity that we need to provide, you know, to young people? And I know you're doing that through your design thinking program, and just talk a little bit about that.
Yes, I was just going to say, the World Economic Forum has been saying for the last 3 years, one of the top important skills anyone needs, whether you have a PhD, master's, or none, is emotional intelligence and problem solving and empathy. And that's exactly what design thinking does. The methodology of building something that's truly solving a problem, and that's going to further someone's experience, saying that, wow, I now have FaceTime, not because it's another added to the app, but what it does, it allows me to connect to someone else and to have that connection. And we need to now be in an age where our tech is connecting and really solving issues. And now we're experiencing that with sharing of data, where we've lost that connection. We've just kind of progressed because now we can, but what were we solving? What was the problem we were solving? Where's the empathy and where's the human connection? And for us, we think it's important that girls not just only know how to code, because if you look at the statistics, girls are actually leaving the tech industry now than they ever were in 1980s. So it's not necessarily that they don't know how to do the work, it's the culture is not there, and they're not being pushed to be leaders and to speak up to work on projects. So having the skills of empathy and emotional intelligence will allow them to sustain in the industry where they can further the culture that they need to fight against.
Another mega trend, exponential globalization.
I think I'll go with that one. Wow. For me, I see that as an opportunity to grow and adapt to new unfolding trends. And that's what we're doing basically at Let Girls Be Educated. Because once we started as Girl Child Project, and we were a very local grassroots organization, but because of the changing nature, the demanding nature of our organization in one hand, but also demanding nature of the world in itself, and let's say in organization, advocacy, and institutions, we had to change the course of our organization. We had to reshape, in a sense, restructure every aspect of our organization. So we started from changing the name to the programs and upgrading, in a sense. So for me, that word means adapting to new trends, in a sense, at the same time not forgetting, of course, the core and essence of what you stand for, and of course accommodating new values and new ideas as you move along and grow.
Okay, so you're expanding your organization. Do you have a goal of how many people you want to reach or girls you want to impact over the next few years?
Right. So initially my goal was starting from 100 girls, and now that has, of course, skyrocketed.
You've far exceeded that.
Definitely.
You're being modest.
We have 250. So for me, in the next 2 years, I see having 300 or 400 more girls in school. But perhaps one of the most important goals I have for myself is to bring more men and boys in the conversation for girls' education. And I see that, I take that very personally. I am a proclaimed feminist, thanks to one young girl for providing me the platform to do that. But I see it as a very important goal to bring more men and boys in the conversation, to educate them that equality and feminism, it's not scary, in a sense. It's not scary words. Okay. You can embrace them and coexist with girls while you try to reach your full potential.
Okay, I have 2 more words left. Gig economy and Internet of Things.
I can take that Internet of Things.
400, go ahead.
When we talk about the Internet of Things, it's really about this idea of connectivity and how we're all growing, in some ways, more connected to each other. And now there's really no excuse why you can't be educated, why you can't be informed, and why you can't be doing something when it comes to talking about political issues or social issues. And at the same time, I think what the internet has done, in particular in politics, is radically transforming the space, because we're now in a world where you are always going to be accountable. If you're a politician, you say something dumb, you wear something dumb, you do something dumb, people are going to come after you. And there's no escape. And back in that era that we used to have of, politicians trying to dodge questions and, really trying to avoid giving a definitive stance, that world is over. politicians can't live there anymore. People want to know, and people are watching every single move that politicians are making. And I think that's great because it's keeping them accountable. No longer can we have them kind of vested in these sort of third-party interests or not representing their constituents. Now there has to be accountability on that high level, and I think that we're going to see more and more trickling up of representation of people of color, of LGBTQ people, of women, of indigenous people, as well as seeing policies that are more socially inclusive, because there's no more getting away from those policies anymore.
We're going to open it up for questions from the audience.
Hello, everybody. My name is Justin Shafer. I'm a social entrepreneur also. I think the work you guys are doing is absolutely amazing. Had a conversation with my grandfather a couple years ago when I first started. He was like, oh, you're a social entrepreneur. You must be broke. You need some money? And I mean, you know, what I explained to him, and I think what you guys probably understand, is that it's a really trendy time to be a social entrepreneur, right? It's really popular now for corporations and politicians to attach themselves to causes and entities. But I'm wondering, on you guys' case, have you guys found that this current time is advantageous in your pursuit of necessary funding to move your ventures forward? Is there anything any tactics that you guys are using you know, to approach these kinds of entities to ensure that you're getting the funding you need to push your ventures forward?
That's a really good question. Thank you, Justin. At least for me, so I'm speaking from the perspective of being transnational, because that's what we are at the point, being in Canada, United States, and Jamaica. So what I found is that definitely I've always was looking for the money first. I need the check, especially when you're taking those flights internationally and you're working with the community. But then what I also find is that have like a percentage of money that you really want, you're looking for, and then also have the in-kind donation and the skills. And one thing that I found that a lot of young entrepreneurs or individuals who are working, who are starting out, really don't take value in that. If a company is saying, hey, I will give you this space, this gorgeous space, I'll give you all the technology that's in this space, whereas it's worth $5K US and you don't have to pay for that. I'll give you 5 of my staff who are fully trained engineers and they can do that. You have to be able to balance that, because then when you go to your sponsors, you can say, oh, what you do is don't tell them you have this space, but quantify the amount and say, hey, I actually have 10K in sponsorship. So how can you match that? And in a way, you do have 10K in sponsorship, but in kind. And that's something that I learned, that I had to be appreciative of the in-kind support that I've been receiving from my organization, saying, had I had to go out and pay the professional costs, I would not be able to afford that. So that's what I would say, is to be able to do that. Certainly, you have to get to a point where these corporations and organizations want to keep giving you in-kind donations, where you have to just be polite and kind of balance them out and say, okay, great, the space is great, but also too, let's consider the team's expenses. Let's consider the volunteers and appreciation for them and gifts, and these also cost as well. So I think having a percentage of how much in-kind donations you will accept for the month or quarterly or year will help you balance of not being misvalued of having the need of financial contributions.
Hi. If you want to answer. But my name is Elizabeth, and I work for Johnson & Johnson. And we have a group on campus called the Women's Leadership and Inclusion. And the goal is to do exactly what you're doing, is to bring more women into leadership and also to retain them for STEM activities. I myself am an engineer, and we still struggle with having equal representation among management, especially middle management. And one thing that we're really struggling with right now is bringing men to the conversation. And it's not that anyone disagrees with us, it's just they're not joining the conversation. So do you have any recommendations or, you know, the message that you're sharing with the men in your life and in your program, how are you getting them to the table itself?
I think the most important thing, let me tell you something about us. There was a quote, I think, it's so funny, I was watching a show lately, and I forget the name of the person who said it. It's like, men are worried because women would laugh at them, in a sense. So basically, it's making us men, I'll put myself in there, understand that empowering you guys, women, is not necessarily at our expense, in a sense. it's actually beneficial for us, for you guys to be empowered in a sense. So the message that I carry along out to my fellow men and to everyone out there is to make them understand the specifics in a sense. Not only the data, the economics about empowering women, everything, and just make sense, look, if it's a simple math. You live in a house, you have a sister, your wife, if she works, the bill is cut in half. That's simple. You know what I'm trying to say? If you guys are a couple and a team in the house, there's less stress in the house. I feel like sometimes you have to boil things down to the basic and make them understand. But with respect to that cause, I really believe it's bringing them on the table and make them see the math, the economics of it. At the same time, give them that sense that actually they shouldn't fear empowering women in a sense. Having more women in the STEM field does not necessarily mean that in the next 10 or 20 years, there will be no men in the STEM field in a sense. It's just about providing space, just about, you know what, shift over a little bit, let me sit down, and let's create a better world for both of us. Yeah.
And I just want to add quickly to that. The reason why is a lot of the individuals I work with are men. Like when I started a New Reality, it was my mentor who's a man. He's a Deloitte principal partner. And I met him through the work that I was doing with UN Women. I contributed to the campaign, Break the Glass campaign, and PwC was a champion of that. And so what that is champion women in the workplace who work in non-traditional fields, whether it's construction, engineering, management consultant. So through our personal relationship and having him help me with a New Reality in terms of funding and just support, what we've learned with each other and other men who have supported me as well, some of them are here in the room supporting me tonight, is champions. Like, you know, take it that way. Like we have champions in our lives, and men, like you mentioned, at their very core, they're still egotistic, even though some don't want to say that they are, but they are. But use that to your benefit, because he's so proud to champion this like young warrior and to be stand next to her and to help her go forward. And so, first of all, empower the woman to have their voice. I think we're not talking about that a lot. Like, because when you have confidence issues and you're not self-confident and you are not being uplifted already in your gender, that's difficult to speak in a room. So I do believe in safe spaces for women to have that build up first, but then go and have the conversation with men. You could be the champion to see this next young management consultant or engineer rise, and they'll love that. So bring it to that championship, partnership relationship, and you might see a little bit of a dynamic change.
And I just want to add to that, that's definitely important. I have a younger sister, and whenever she wants something from me, she has a way of tapping into my ego in a sense, of making it say, if you do it, it's actually beneficial for you. Now, that's the tiny, bit of it. But like she mentioned, like actually showing them that it's beneficial for them to champion you guys, giving them specific, like this is point A and B and C. If we're empowered, this is what we're going to achieve together. This is the outcome we're going to have. I feel like emphasizing that it's really the key at this point, in a sense of getting men and boys involved in the conversation.
And I'd like to add on that, I, with Plus One Vote, we did an entire campaign on women. And when I was starting this and having conversations with a lot of my team, a question that came to me was, why should you run a campaign on women? And I thought, why shouldn't I? I think that there's no reason why we shouldn't be trying to empower other people, right? And I think it's so important that we highlight the issues that people are facing, that we expose the fact that, women are making 20 cents on the dollar of men in this country, and even less if you're a woman of color, even less if you're African American. And we need to bring that to the forefront, bring that to discussion, call that inequality out for what it is in a very physical, real way, right? It's not just, oh, I feel bad or I don't feel welcomed, which is legitimate in itself, but it's a very real financial impact that we're having on women. We need to tell those stories. We need to bring that to the forefront, and I think we need to bring people to the polls so we can change that dynamic.
Yep.
Yeah, vote 2020.
Okay.
So you vote.
Are there other questions? Yes.
So, as a 20-something-year-old, our education path is, of course, getting a bachelor's degree and then jumping into our career. But we already know that by the year 2030, millions of jobs do not exist that will in 2030. And that's a really scary thought for someone who has a bachelor's degree and might not be able to use it by then. So we have to get really used to the idea of reskilling ourselves, upskilling ourselves, really changing our education and getting re-educated. But how do we kind of remove the stigma and tear that down about re-educating yourself and about going back to school and about reskilling yourself, especially as you get older, that becomes a little bit scarier. And I think that's a problem that we'll be facing really soon.
I like this one because,
I like that one too.
yeah, no, because it really, like, we'll take 2 minutes. It reminds me of myself because even though I'm here today talking about tech, and when I heard about this, the subject matter, education and technology, I was like, yes, that's what I do. But I actually have a degree in political science and public administration. I used to work in politics and do campaigns and write for bills for the federal government. And now I'm reading about AI and automation and Bitcoin. And so exactly what you're saying. So I'm not really using my degree. I have 2. I'm not really using them. But actually, what you are using is that you have to find the finite skills in that. What I learned in politics is how to negotiate, how to position what you're offering to someone else, and to know what your platform is or your position is the best one. So when I meet with these corporations, I come to them and all of my experiences, yes, as a Black woman, yes, as an immigrant, Jamaican, Canadian person, and having studied political science and bringing that together, because me now looking at a tech problem, and I do code a little bit, is a completely different perspective than someone who's an engineer and studied that their entire lives, right? So use that as a benefit, because as they were saying, I read another statistic from World Economic Forum, actually those philosophy degrees are gonna be useful in a couple of years when you have to then decipher the human connection that's missing the code. So what I would say is find non-educational tools. And that's why I founded my own tech startup, Wolfram Tech. I realize is that women professionals, we have so much knowledge in working. And imagine if we were able to take that and create your own masterclass. So with a CTO that I used to work with for another company, we built our own platform. And now we're going to be launching it soon. But again, it goes back to the emphasis of we all compass some form of education, but don't be uncomfortable to learn that from LinkedIn. LinkedIn has some really great courses, or Coursera, or whatever, or me with a friend who's older. But I think we have to get beyond that idea of just structural school, because it doesn't work for everybody. And how structural school is doesn't even work, because look at a lot of the inventors. A lot of them did not succeed in that structural school, right? So one, don't be ashamed that you have that social science degree, if that's what you have, because I have one too. And then 2, be able to find these little, sometimes free courses where you can really adapt. So when you go to those meetings or a proposal, you have a lot to present for yourself.
Okay.
And to add on that, and I think you're right on a lot of that, is, I think it's so ingrained in our culture that we even, hi, like, tell me about yourself. You say your name and you say your occupation, right? It's so ingrained that you are tied to this one linear individual career or job that you have. And this pathway of career is really over now, right? It's not like people are going in and sitting at the same company for 20, 30 years, getting a nice retirement check at the end of that and, going to Florida or whatever. Those days are so gone. I'm so sure that you would not be able to afford any sort of property in Florida with whatever you're getting from your business. And, and speaking from my own experience as a fellow 20-something, it's, I've worked as a producer, I've worked as a photographer, I've worked as a business consultant, I've worked as a nonprofit founder, I've worked in policy, and it's given me such a unique perspective because I can do the research and the science behind whatever it is that we're talking about. I can write the policy based on that science. I can form an entire movement, getting people out on the ground to advocate for that science, and then I can get the people in office to actually implement that policy, right? And so if I came in here with this one limited understanding of I want to be a diplomat or I want to be a whatever, it would take away so much of the richness that is part of that conversation. And so when we think about reskilling and retooling, I'm the type of person that I'm always learning something. I'm always reading an article about some issue happening somewhere. I'm watching a video, learning from the people, whatever tutorial it is on YouTube, just understanding more beyond what it is that's traditionally expected of me, bringing that to the table. And that is what shapes my success. If I didn't have those different areas of expertise, I would just be another person in the room and not being able to fundamentally change the conversation, but just being able to talk about the same things that everyone's talking about. And I'm done talking, especially where issues like climate change and things like this. I'm so over just talking about it. We're at a pivotal point where we need to fundamentally have action, and it's this sort of globalization of ideas, a sort of transformation of what I think our education system needs to go through, that I've kind of personally just been doing, that I think will be the thing that is now allowing young people or people who are not traditionally represented in these spaces to be able to change them and to be able to define their own careers as they want them, rather than how their lives are presented to them by somebody else.
I think we have time for one more question. Yes.
Hello. Hi. My name is Gwen Madiba, and I'm the founder of Equal Chance, which is a foundation that works towards giving equal opportunities and chances to Black communities in Canada and also on the African continent where I'm from, especially our youth, our young girls, and young men as well. The reason why I even started this was because of my own experience in the workforce, and I've talked about it with Aminka in Montreal months and months back, where I found it was so difficult for me as a woman and as a Black woman to work in another association that was a minority association, where I was fighting for the rights of women who were basically oppressing my rights. And that was very hard for me. And I thought, if I'm going through this, there must be so many other women, so many other people that are going through this. So let's create spaces and opportunities for my people, my children as well, using my networks and others' networks. And last year, I was able to launch the Education Fund for Orphans in Senegal and Gabon. Saad, you talked about calling out people, calling things for what they are. And Ousmane, you spoke about some of the challenges of including men in the conversation. So my question for all of you is, a lot of us go through challenges within our social activities, our foundations, our life in general. How do you tackle adversity and challenges? How do you learn how to let the rain of judgments flow down the umbrella of your indifference and success?
Oh. What a last question.
Well,
yes.
Yeah. Okay. So, first of all, I think as social entrepreneurs, and all of us, go through challenges. It's so funny. I just noticed one social entrepreneur, a very incredible guy, Suman Kumar, sitting right there. We've talked about a lot, some of the challenges we encounter as social entrepreneurs. And definitely you're going to encounter just challenges for sure. But I feel like at the end of the day, what's important when you face just challenges is to remind yourself the reason why you're fighting in the first place and stick to those values that led you to that fight. I believe you're a woman, you've gone through a lot, as you've mentioned, and you're taking action for that. So at a time and phrase where you're confronted with challenges, you should definitely sit back and ask yourself why you're fighting this. You should sit back and reflect back on the challenges you've gone through, on the thing that led you to that fight in the first place, and reflect, if I leave this fight, would I be going to the same struggle that I went through? If the answer is yes, then nothing should stand in your way in the first. Because for me personally, standing out and declaring myself a feminist, I received a lot of backlash in Guinea. When I went back, there's this myth that, oh my God, I've become a gay or something like that. Therefore, I'm just trying to turn myself into a woman and I'm a feminist. So I had to literally educate people on the meaning of feminism. And it was a struggle initially, honestly, because it became a challenge in my community. Here am I outside the world fighting for my community who is rejecting me in a sense. So that became a challenge. But at the end of the day, I have to sit back and ask myself, why am I fighting? I've gone through certain dramatic events in my life that I figured that no challenge is really going to deter me down this, and I just have to turn back to my principle and value and continue to fight. So challenges are going to come, and sometimes it's going to be, that days is going to be really tough and hard, and that days you might have to sit back and question yourself. But at the end of the day, always stick to why you're fighting, the reason why you're fighting. That's most important.
Absolutely, and I'd like to add on to that. When we're talking about adversity, and we're looking in the United States, for example, we see that this country was made in a very particular way by very particular people. Women have only had the right to vote in this country for 100 years. People of color people that look like me, we were not welcomed here, as immigrants until very recently, and that is up to debate right now as well. And what that does is it pushes away everyone else, right? It creates a lot of spectators, and there's a sort of expectation that people should just watch and let things happen as they're happening. And I fundamentally disagree with that idea. I think that, if you come to the table and you have a new idea, you have a new innovative idea, or you're calling out something for what it is, and you're saying this is wrong, this is inequality, I don't like this, I want to change this. The first thing that always happens is people are going to say, who are you? Who are you to make this change? Why should we listen to you? How are you possibly capable to do this? And that's the first thing that people always say. And that alone deters almost everybody. And when I realized that for myself, I thought, well, I don't see people who look like me or talk like me or sound like me in any of these spaces. But you know who does? I do. And so I'm going to bring myself into these spaces, and I'm going to speak my truth, I'm going to speak my mind, and I'm going to make sure that people listen. And what I found is when I started doing that, entire communities of people started getting behind that and wanting to push similar ideas, similar agendas, and having this faith and idea of transformativeness of what this country really can be and of what leadership can look like. And so when people say that you can't do it, for me now just rolls right off the back, and I'm just like, all right, like, are you sure you want to say that? Because either you can join my side or you can just fall behind me, because I'm on a journey and I'm moving forward. I don't know what you're doing. You're just this pit of misery and despair, so good luck to you, sir.
Yeah, for me, same with you. In terms of adversity, for me, for those who know me, I know you, Gwen, I'm very attached to my work. Like, I'm just going to keep it 100% real. Like, I'm very emotional, not an emotional person, but to my work, because I'm very genuine. Like, I do what I do because I really want to see an effective change. And I think right now it is hard sometimes, mainly because something that Justin had mentioned, that everybody wants to be in this space. And we can say sometimes it's cloud chasing. And if you're really genuine, it's hard. It's hardening, because when you're genuine, you will work for free. And if you have worked for free and you volunteer for your own organization, haven't taken a paycheck, it can be hard. And to me, those are some of the most challenging adversaries, when you're having challenges with individuals who are making your work harder when it's not supposed to be. But then what I remind myself is something what you said, what are you doing it for? And not so much in a cliche way, but I take it in a sense that we need to build, I heard this before, you need to build so the problem is completely solved. And I think lots of times in the social entrepreneurship space, or previously nonprofit / humanitarian / it was just to continue to stay in this space. And I think we have to look at ourselves. Are we building organizations and solutions to truly solve the issue? Are we truly being innovative, where if someone else come up with a better idea, are we willing to work with them? And for me, this is how I take with the adversaries. I say to myself, when I'm getting personal, am I getting personally attacked? And I remove myself. How is the best way to push the organization forward? Can it survive without you? How are you building it to survive? I think lots of times, if we're true strong leaders and building true effective organizations, we will do the work that it stands without us. And I think that's the challenge that sometimes we have, where we don't know how to separate, not saying separate your work because it's a part of who you are, but separate the cause. Like, yes, I want girls to be free and equitable in Guinea. Yes, I want everyone to vote in America. But if all you talk about all the time, and you can no longer be nice and have conversations with a neighbor, then there's something truly wrong. And I think that we also have to check ourselves when it comes to that. So.
And one more thing I think is very important, especially as social young entrepreneurs, which I think, there are a lot of us becoming entrepreneurs, is that when we're confronted, when we get stuck, we tend to have this mentality that, oh, we know everything. We should just stick there and, just continue. If we get stuck, we don't move forward, then that's it. No, it's very important to seek help. Because for me in my organization, I did get stuck at some point, and I needed fresh ideas, fresh minds, and fresh faces. And that's why I brought my co-founder, Sukaina Aloraji, whose expertise has been incredible in terms of restructuring our organization and rebranding it. So it's really important to seek help and support out there, because at the end of the day, what's important is achieving the goal. All the rest will follow suit. I think we should not focus on saying, I founded this, or I am the starter of this, so that hence I should be, claiming all ideas. No, it's really important to seek support, seek help when you're confronted with challenges, because in that way, you're not only widening your horizon, you're paving path for success in a sense.
All right, great. So I'm going to ask you in one sentence, what you would share with the audience here and those watching online, how you would provide or ensure equitable access for all. It's a tough one. One sentence. Anyone who wants to jump in first?
How will we ensure
equitable access for all? What they can do to get involved to ensure equitable access for all.
Vote.
We knew what he was going to say, by the way. Yes.
When it comes to my organization with Plus One, the entire idea is not to just vote yourself, right? Yeah. That's traditionally what we see in voter campaigns. It's like, oh, get out the vote, go and vote, and that's all fine, and we should, and you should all register after this session. But it's also to engage other people in voting.
Yes.
And
one sentence, yes.
So engage other people in your mission, engage other people in your beliefs, and engage your community and organize around that. And that's how you can create the change around you that you're trying to create.
Yeah, very good. Yep.
And vote.
In one sentence for
the audience, how they can get involved, those in the building right now, in the studio, and those watching online, how they can get involved to ensure equitable access for all.
Right. Well, to my fellow men out there in the audience and who are watching, learn to coexist with women. Simple. In the workforce, school, home, everywhere, learn to coexist. And by that, I mean learning to embrace her ideas, at the same time learning to give her space for her to flourish as a person.
Yeah. Aminka?
So the one sentence for me would be put people in position of influence. And the reason I say that is that very quickly, for us to get girls to our summit, especially girls that are from the inner cities of the boroughs, it's very difficult. But we are able to do so because community teachers will see them and to say, you should go there. So there's somebody in your life that needs something, but they're just looking for someone to give them a push. So put people in spaces of influence for them to be able to change their lives.
All right. Thank you so much. Thanks for being here today, and this was amazing. Appreciate it. Thank you.
For
Have a good evening.
Bye.